It was 6:07 a.m., precisely when Sir Whiskers, a majestic, marvellously plumped tabby, with a fur pattern resembling an old velvet couch, opened one skeptical green eye. The sound of clattering cutlery and a muffled exclamation of "Oh fiddlesticks!" echoed from the kitchen. That meant only one thing. His human, Miss Lolly, was attempting breakfast again. From his perch atop the refrigerator, the safest and highest ground in their chaotic apartment, he peered down with the weariness of a creature who had seen too much. Miss Lolly, a whirlwind of striped pajamas, fluffy socks, and well-meaning disaster, was in the middle of what she called cooking and what Whiskers referred to, more accurately, as culinary calamity. This morning's offense began with a box of cereal and a container of orange juice. Simple enough, one might assume, but not when filtered through Lolly's morning brain. She blinked, yawned, poured, and before Whiskers could let out a warning meow, orange juice splashed into the cereal bowl. "Oh, whoops," she mumbled. Whiskers sighed. From his angle, he had a perfect view of the rising toast beginning to smoke behind her. The toaster, that little dragon box, puffed black tendrils into the air. Lolly spun around too late. She reached for the toaster and knocked over a jug of milk in the process. Milk flowed across the counter in a mighty wave, edging dangerously close to Whiskers' treat jar. He sprang into action. With a heroic lunge, more wobble than grace, Sir Whiskers launched himself down, skidding across the counter, his tail straight as a mast. In a cinematic moment of slow-motion glory, he batted the treat jar to safety, sending it spinning toward the sink where it landed, miraculously upright. Milk soaked his whiskers. Toast fell on the floor. Lolly clutched a spatula like a weapon and shouted, "I can fix this." She could not fix this. Whiskers returned to the fridge top, soggy but proud. He surveyed the battlefield. One ruined bowl of breakfast, one sad, blackened slice of toast, and a floor now both crunchy and sticky. Lolly looked up at him, her face smeared with jam she hadn't even touched. "Maybe we'll just do granola bars today," she said cheerfully. He flicked his tail and stared at his food bowl, still empty. Lolly gasped. "Oh my gosh, Whiskers, I forgot your breakfast." She poured his kibble with exaggerated ceremony and bowed as if offering treasure to royalty. Whiskers descended, inspected the bowl, gave a slow approving blink, and began to eat. The kitchen was a disaster, but the day had officially begun. And for Sir Whiskers, the true king of the household, this was just another victorious morning in the realm of domestic chaos. It was laundry day, a phrase that filled Sir Whiskers with equal parts dread and disdain. He watched from the windowsill throne as Miss Lolly dragged an overflowing basket through the apartment like a wagon full of fabric snakes. Socks dangled off the edge. A trail of mismatched buttons and lint balls followed her every step. "Time to tackle the Mount Washmore," she declared, raising a sock triumphantly like a pirate with a treasure map. Sir Whiskers blinked slowly. He knew what was coming. It always began with optimism and ended in utter foam-drenched ruin. The first offense. Miss Lolly shoved 3 full loads of laundry into one machine. The poor thing groaned like it had eaten too much spaghetti. She poured in detergent. Well, more like an entire waterfall of it. Then slammed the lid shut and pressed every button in what Whiskers could only describe as a chaotic ballet of guesswork. Within minutes, The washing machine started rumbling. It hiccuped, then burped, then growled. Whiskers leapt onto the dryer to supervise. Bubbles began to ooze from the sides like it had developed a rabid case of the suds. Foam crept across the floor like it was staging a very slow invasion. Miss Lolly, oblivious, danced to music from her headphones and folded towels with such enthusiasm that she tripped over the vacuum cord, landed in the laundry basket, and flung a sock squarely onto Whisker's head. He did not move. The sock sat like a crown. 10 minutes later, Miss Lolly returned from the kitchen looking puzzled. "Why is there a sock in the fridge?" she murmured, holding up a blue ankle sock beside the leftover spaghetti. Sir Whiskers knew the answer. Chaos. It was always chaos. By mid-afternoon, the apartment resembled a laundromat struck by a small storm. Damp clothes hung from lamps. A bra dangled from the ceiling fan. Whiskers battered at it lazily as it spun. In the hallway, the great sock pile grew. Lolly had given up sorting and simply tossed them into a basket labeled Mystery Mates. Just as Whiskers was preparing to nap among the freshly warmed towels, the machine gave one final shudder and stopped. Silence fell. Miss Lolly peeked inside. "I think we did it," she cheered. She had not. The whites were pink, a red shirt had snuck in, a little laundry ninja, and turned everything a rosy hue. Whiskers stared down at his favorite cream-colored blanket, now blushing. He gave her a look that could only be described as regal disappointment. Miss Lolly shrugged. "It's a statement color now." Whiskers sighed. The foam subsided. The house fell quiet, at least until next week. He curled up in a laundry basket full of mismatched socks and drifted off to sleep. In his dreams, all the socks came in pairs and machines knew when to stop. So Whiskers awoke from his midday sunbeam nap to the rustle of plastic pots and the unmistakable crinkle of seed packets. His eyes narrowed. There was only one explanation for this level of activity. Miss Lolly had a new hobby. "I'm going to be a plant mum," she announced, holding up a peace lily like she'd just won it in a raffle. Whiskers tilted his head. He'd seen what happened when Lolly got into bread making, soap carving, and interpretive dance. None of those hobbies ended well, for her or the furniture. She spread her new greenery across the living room floor. A fern, 2 succulents, something that looked suspiciously like a weed but wore a sticker that read exotic foliage. She also had a bag of dirt, a spray bottle, and a trowel she'd named Terry. Whiskers watched from the bookshelf, tail flicking. It started harmlessly enough. Pots were arranged. Soil was scooped. Then Lolly brought out the milk. "Plants like milk, right?" she said aloud, unscrewing the cap with an alarming level of confidence. Whiskers froze. He wanted to scream. She poured a generous splash into the cactus pot. The cactus, if it had emotions, would have wept. Next, she misted a pothos plant with what she claimed was a bit of extra hydration, which turned out to be diluted bubble bath. The apartment soon smelled like lilac tragedy. Dirt clumped in odd places. A succulent toppled. Lolly stepped on a trowel and shrieked. Terry was flung into the couch. Whiskers leapt to the rescue, dragging a half-buried bonsai out from under a dripping macrame hanger. He gently nudged it upright and licked a leaf in silent apology. Later, Lolly named the plants. "This is Vader. That one's Maleficent. and the tall one's scar. Whiskers made a note to sleep with one eye open. At dinner time, Lolly tried to serve herself salad using the fern's leaves. Whiskers meowed in protest. She paused, sniffed the lettuce, and muttered, "That's suspiciously earthy." By nightfall, the floor was a minefield of spilled soil, crooked planters, and one very traumatized aloe vera. Lolly sat in the middle of it all, dirt on her nose, and smiled. "Not bad for day one, huh?" Whiskers, covered in bits of mulch, blinked slowly. "I'll get better at it," she promised, watering a plastic plant. Whiskers didn't hold his breath, but he did curl up next to the fern now named Larry and purred. Because despite everything, the oat milk, the bubble bath, and the plant naming ceremony, it wasn't boring. And for a fat, slightly grumpy cat with a fondness for order and kibble, a little chaos meant one thing: he'd always be needed. So Whiskers knew something was amiss the moment the vacuum was banished to the hallway closet. Miss Lolly only did that for 2 reasons: birthdays and guests. She flitted about the apartment like a pigeon on espresso, fluffing pillows, vacuuming crumbs, and muttering about grown-up fun. Tonight was game night. So Whiskers had one rule about game night: avoid it at all costs. The doorbell rang. The horror began. First came Lolly's friend Mimi, who squealed upon seeing Whiskers and tried to hug him. He slinked away, offended. Then came Travers, who brought healthy snacks dry Kaylee chips. Whiskers considered pressing charges. Finally, a toddler appeared, sticky-handed and wide-eyed, clearly under the impression that Sir Whiskers was a rideable creature. He retreated to his sock drawer. From his bunker, Whiskers could hear the madness unfold. Lolly spilled soda on the couch. Someone sat on a jigsaw puzzle. Travers accidentally glued a playing card to Lolly's forehead during a craft break. No one noticed until an hour later. Sir Whiskers peeked out once, just in time to see the toddler marching around with one of his toys in her mouth. He meowed sharply. The humans interpreted this as cuteness and clapped. Whiskers retreated, insulted. At one point, the TV remote went missing. "It's under the cat," someone shouted. It was not. Whiskers hadn't moved in an hour and resented the accusation. Later, someone tried to feed him a grape. A grape. He hissed, offended on a spiritual level. After what felt like 10 lifetimes, the guests finally left. The apartment was a glittery war zone. Half a pizza on the lamp, confetti in the plants, and dice in the sink. Lolly, red-faced and laughing, collapsed onto the couch with a sigh. "We should do that every week." Sir Whiskers emerged from his hideout, fur fluffed, dignity crumpled. He leapt onto her lap. Lolly smiled. "Sorry about the toddler, and the grape, and the glue." Whiskers purred in reluctant forgiveness. Lolly gave him a treat and whispered, "You're the best co-host a girl could ask for." He accepted the compliment. And the treat. Chaos had come and gone. But as always, order had returned. In the form of one very tired, very round, very majestic cat. It was finally quiet. The lights were off. The guests were gone. The plants were no longer weeping from milk exposure. And most importantly, the toddler had been returned to her natural habitat. Sir Whiskers, dignified even in exhaustion, surveyed the apartment from his preferred thinking spot, perched on the edge of the couch, tail flicking like a metronome of judgment. Miss Lolly wandered the living room, cleaning up the last remnants of game night. Confetti under the couch, a half-eaten cookie on the bookshelf, a feather boa wrapped mysteriously around the lamp. "How does this even happen?" she asked aloud, pulling a glittery sticker off her sock. Whiskers didn't answer. She wouldn't understand. Soon she gave up the effort and flopped onto her bed with a dramatic oof, landing face first into a pillow. One sock was on her foot. The other was somehow on her hand. So Whiskers gave her 10 seconds to readjust herself. She didn't. He jumped up beside her. She turned her head and smiled. "Hey, buddy." He stepped over her arm with the grace of a slightly overcooked lasagna, turned twice, and curled against her side. Her hand found his back and began to scratch gently, right between the ears. The purr that erupted from him was like an engine warming up, slow, steady, and deeply content. Lolly whispered, "You know I'd be a total mess without you, right?" Whiskers blinked. Of course she would. She yawned. "You're the best roommate ever." He flicked one ear. "Obviously." As her breathing slowed and she drifted into sleep, still wearing a sock like a mitten, Whiskers felt a warmth that had nothing to do with body heat. This was his human. She was loud, messy, clumsy, occasionally terrifying with household appliances. But she was his. And every night, no matter what disaster the day brought, they ended here. Together. Safe. Warm. He stretched one paw across her belly and kneaded gently. Then he slept, dreaming of a world where breakfast made sense, laundry folded itself, and ferns weren't named after villains. But also, a world where one human in fuzzy socks always came home to him,